Thanks for joining us on Chicago Tonight. I'm Brandis Friedman. Here's what we're looking at.
We've just seized a tanker.
Conflict with Venezuela escalates as the U.S. seizes an oil tanker off the coast.
I stand here humbled by the trust you've placed in me.
And Cook County has a new chief judge for the first time in more than 2 decades. Charles Beach joins us to talk about his new role, the electronic monitoring system, and more. First off tonight, millions of Americans may be seeing a steep rise in healthcare costs in the new year. That's after senators today rejected a pair of competing healthcare-related bills. The Democratic-led effort would have extended the existing Affordable Care Act tax credits that are set to end this month for 3 years. Senators also rejected a Republican alternative that would have created new health savings accounts, giving money directly to consumers instead of insurance companies. But both bills needed 60 votes to advance. Both failed 51 to 48. The move could signal major consequences for some lawmakers in next year's midterms. And speaking of midterms, Indiana is breaking from the Trump administration and opting out of the growing national fight over redistricting. The Hoosier State's Senate today rejected a plan to redraw the state's congressional districts in favor of Republicans. 31 senators, including 21 Republicans, voted down the plan. It comes after Indiana's lawmakers faced mounting pressure by the White House to give Republicans an advantage in the midterm elections, with some being targeted with violent threats. The family of a Chicago police officer killed in the line of duty earlier this year says there's much more to the story of how she died, and they're suing the police department and her former partner.
What she never should have had to fear was her own partner. That betrayal cost Crystal's life. Crystal loved protecting the public. But I can say that CPD failed to protect Crystal.
Attorneys for Crystal Rivera's family say she and her partner, Officer Carlos Baker, were in an on and off romantic relationship for a couple of years. They say she had broken off the relationship but had concerns about what might be Baker's, quote, adverse reaction. The night of the shooting, attorneys say after Baker, quote, accidentally discharged his weapon, striking and killing Rivera, he didn't render aid or call for an ambulance, and that Rivera herself called it in. The police department has declined to comment on the case. Baker's attorneys have yet to respond. For more on this story, please visit our website. The Trump administration is launching its so-called Gold Card visa. That's an immigration pathway allowing would-be immigrants to pay $1 million to expedite their visa applications. Meanwhile, refugee and immigrant advocates in Chicago are speaking out against a flurry of other new immigration restrictions under the administration.
As if the ongoing kidnapping and separation of families were not enough, the federal government, our federal government, continues to find new ways to terrorize our communities.
After the shooting of 2 National Guard members deployed to Washington, D.C. late last month by a suspect who is an Afghan national, the Trump administration announced new immigration restrictions. They include pausing asylum applications for all nationalities, re-examining green card applications for nationals from a list of 19 countries, and conducting a comprehensive re-review of immigrants from that same list who were approved since the start of the Biden administration through the first month of the Trump administration. Critics are calling the policies racist, arbitrary, and wasteful. Up next, we meet Cook County's first new chief judge in more than 2 decades. That's right after this.
Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by the Alexandra and John Nichols family, the Polk Brothers Foundation, and the support of these donors.
Cook County has a new chief judge for the first time in nearly 25 years. Judge Charles Beach inherits the nation's second largest unified court system And it comes with a little bit of baggage. The office now manages the pretrial electronic monitoring system, which has come under scrutiny after some high-profile cases. And courthouses have been a focus of recent immigration enforcement efforts. Joining us now is Circuit Court of Cook County Chief Judge Charles Beach. Congrats and welcome to Chicago tonight.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So you stepped into this role. It has not changed hands since 2001. Why did you want this position?
I left private practice to get on the bench because I believed in the judiciary. I believed in the positive things it can do. And as I worked my way through and had various supervisor roles, I just thought being in leadership is a way you can further effectuate those positive things in the judiciary. So it's a long road towards trying to make this a better county.
What was it about, or what do you think it was about your sort of campaign that might have resonated with the judges who elected you?
Transparency, honesty, modernization. I met with every judge that was willing to sit down and talk to me, and
that's several hundred.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a busy couple months, a busy 90 days, but a personal connection, getting their thoughts and feelings on what we could do better, how we could be better, sharing my vision of how we could be better, and that was the process, and I think people embraced that. So.
You've said that you're concerned about immigrants being arrested outside of courthouses. Of course, that is something Governor Pritzker is also concerned with, having signed a law just this week against that very thing. How do you plan to address safety and trust for the immigrant communities who are interacting with the justice system here?
Well, we currently have an order that was put in place by my predecessor, Chief Evans. It's going to stay in place. It's important that litigants, whether they be victims, witnesses, the accused, know that they can come to court, that the law is going to be there to support them, and that this is a safe space for them to be. For the judiciary to work, for our system of law to work, they need to be able to get to and from court and be active in court.
A couple of recent cases, of course, as we mentioned, involving defendants who've been on electronic monitoring, who've either been killed or harmed someone else, having drawn attention to the use of electronic monitoring. What improvements do you think need to be made to the system?
So we're looking at the electronic monitoring system that's currently under the Office of Chief Judge. We're going to analyze it. We're going to use some data to take a look at what's working, what's not working, and definitely try to tighten up our protocols. Like everything, it can be improved, and that's what we're looking to do.
Your office has suggested reinstating the practice of reporting escalated EM alerts to the state's attorney's office. It had recently been turned off because that office was concerned about the volume of alerts that they were receiving. How do you plan on working with State's Attorney Eileen O'Neill Burke on this?
First of all, State's Attorney Burke, I think, is a great partner, and I'm looking forward to working with her. I was not part of those conversations, and I can't speak to what happened there or didn't happen there. What I can tell you is this, is that we're going to look internally what we need to do to report better and work out a system with the state's attorney to make sure that it's effectual for everybody.
Okay, been on the job for 6 days, so.
Yeah, it's an early start, but we started working literally the day after the election. My team and everybody else, and we're going to continue to work full speed ahead.
Can't do everything right away, obviously.
No.
Although by tomorrow, I expect you'll have everything done.
Done,
obviously.
handled.
Do you think electronic monitoring, though, should it remain under the Chief Judge's purview? Is that something that you had considered in your pursuit of this job?
It is something I looked at. There is currently a statewide system run by the Office of Statewide Pretrial Services that services about 82 of the 102 counties in the state and operates their electronic monitoring program. Certainly, my committee, as they review what we're doing here in Cook County, will consider what the statewide division could do as well, and whether it's better placed here or with them.
Okay. It used to be with the Sheriff's Department, of
Correct.
course. It sounds like that's not necessarily an option.
No, I mean, the sheriff had absolutely the right to not continue that program. Chief Evans took that program on, and obviously I'm going to evaluate it as it currently is and then make a determination whether it stays with us or whether OSPS can take it.
The Safety Act and the elimination of cash bail also been in place for a few years now. What is your view on how that legislation impacts public safety?
So I was in the pretrial division when the Safety Act was implemented, and I sat in that courtroom and I made those tough decisions every day for almost 6 years, a few of those years under the Safety Act. It is a good piece of legislation. I'm not in the policy business, though. I don't write legislation. That's another branch of government that does that. I know that my judges look at that legislation, they apply the facts, to that legislation or that law and make the best decisions they can. As far as changes or implementation or changes in the way it operates, that's up to the legislature.
Judge, obviously there's many divisions in the Cook County courts, everything from traffic violations to child custody battles, and obviously the criminal issues that we've already been talking about. Are there any divisions that you think need the most or have the most urgent need for modernization?
So juvenile, particularly the Juvenile Temporary Detention Center, was an initial focus of ours immediately. So we dug in and started looking at that. Also the domestic relations and domestic violence. The domestic violence courthouse in particular, when I was a practicing attorney, was a sleepy kind of courthouse. There wasn't a ton going on. Today you walk into that courthouse and there's people sitting in folding chairs in the hallways. There's a lot going on in that building, and so I think we need to look at that, see what we can do to make it more efficient. Perhaps take some of the load off the judges over there so that they can focus on, the seriousness of what happens in that building.
And you mentioned juvenile as well. What kind of changes do you think might be needed there, or what do you feel like needs your attention right away?
Well, the JTDC in particular, it's been a hot point for a while, and we've been looking at it, and a committee I had formed looked at it and made recommendations, which I just adopted the other day. We are going to implement what is considered best practices as seen across the country. Previously we had not been doing that, but we are going to do that going forward, and that will involve new hires, a new organizational structure, and some monitoring.
Okay. There's also, of course, equity within, or equality in the court system. Black and brown residents disproportionately represented in the criminal legal system. How are you working with other offices, CPD, again, state's attorney, to ensure fairness and equity?
Well, first of all, I'm fortunate to have the stakeholders that I have to work with. Public Defender Mitchell is a fantastic person, and I enjoy working with him very much. State Attorney Burke I've known for a very long time, and her and I have a very open policy of communication, as I have with Mr. Mitchell. We're all working together to make this a better place for everybody, no matter where you come from, whatever your station of life might be. Our objective is to make this the fairest judicial system in the country. So it's an ongoing battle. It's something that you constantly have to monitor and improve and pay attention to, but we're all doing that, and I think we're doing that together quite well.
It is a massive system as well. What do you think the challenges might be in sort of getting your arms around something like that to manage?
Well, yeah, there's approximately 2,600 employees, not including the judges. So it's a major corporation, for a lack of a better term. Just understanding where people are, what they're doing, getting your arms around it. The Chief Evans had been there for 24 years. And he did a great job while he was there. I'll have a different approach to how things are managed than him, just because I'm a different person. But that approach involves getting down, meeting the individuals. I've actually, so far, been to almost every courthouse and met not only with the judges, but the support staff, the social service workers, the probation workers. My intention is to be seen by them, to hear them, and to try to improve the way they work more efficiently, make them more efficient so they serve the county better.
All right, Chief Judge Charles Beach, congrats. Best of luck to you.
Thank you.
On the big job you've just taken on. We look forward to having you back.
I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.
And we're back with more right after this. Since summer, the Trump administration has ordered strikes on boats of alleged drug traffickers. 87 people have been killed, including a controversial so-called double tap strike that killed 2 survivors of the initial bombing. This week, the U.S. military also seized an oil tanker off the Venezuelan coast of the Caribbean Sea. President Trump has threatened a ground invasion, calling Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro a narco-terrorist. He's made similar claims about Colombian President Gustavo Petro as well. Joining us now are Juan Gonzalez, a senior fellow with the Great Cities Institute at the University of Illinois, Chicago. He's also the co-host of Democracy Now! It's a weekday news program that airs on TV, radio, and YouTube. And on Zoom, we have Alberto Cole, Director of Global Engagement and Law Professor at DePaul University, and Lena Brito, an Associate Professor of Latin American and Caribbean Studies at Northwestern University. Thanks to the three of you for joining us. So, as we mentioned, the U.S. has seized this oil tanker off the coast of Venezuela, taking over its resources. The White House says that they plan to go through the legal process of forfeiture to have that tanker turn into a U.S. port to seize that oil. U.S. Senator from Illinois Dick Durbin has called for a public briefing following the seizure of that tanker. Here he is.
I hope it's a briefing for the whole Senate, and I hope we make it public. We are edging toward war with Venezuela. The American people have a right to know what's going on.
Juan Gonzalez, do you agree with Senator Durbin that we're inching towards a war with Venezuela?
Oh, well, there's no doubt. There are 15,000 troops and the largest aircraft carrier in the world, and not in the Caribbean Sea on vacation. There's been escalating threats by the U.S. government, not only with the attacks on these small boats allegedly carrying drugs, but also the declaration by President Trump last year closing the airspace over Venezuela, something that's illegal for the U.S. government to do. A country can only close an airspace over another country if it's involved in an armed conflict or if the United Nations has so approved. So the mere fact of claiming to close the airspace is another escalation by the Trump administration, and now the seizure of the tanker is further proof that the administration is inching toward a military conflict with Venezuela.
Lena Brito, Trump has called both the Venezuelan and Colombian presidents narco-terrorists. Is he manufacturing consent for an invasion, for the conflict that Juan Gonzalez is just referring to?
Oh, yes, definitely. He's not only manufacturing consent, what he's also doing with this deployment of this type of discourse is also closing ranks with the right-wing forces within each country. Let's not forget that Colombian right-wing politicians had been traveling to Washington, D.C. Since Trump was inaugurated early this year to talk to different people in his administration to show that they support whatever decision they made about the neighboring country of Venezuela. And yesterday, and actually the last 2-3 days, we saw in Oslo, in Norway, Maria Corina Machado, the new Nobel Peace Prize winner, also, complimenting Trump and talking about these different decisions or acts of war or aggression on the part of the Trump administration against Venezuela as decisive moves. So it's not just about manufacturing consent in the public sphere of the United States. It's also about closing ranks with those in those countries that are supporting this type of aggression on the part of the Trump administration.
Alberto Cole, same question to you. Is Trump manufacturing consent here?
I wouldn't look at it that way. First of all, I think that Venezuela and Colombia are two separate cases. Venezuela is a dictatorship. It also is responsible for facilitating, as a state actor, the export of huge amounts of cocaine to the United States and now to Europe through Africa, where Venezuelan drug trafficking organizations are working with African jihadist groups to export massive quantities to Europe. Under international law, states are free to take countermeasures in response to other states' illegal acts. The fact that the Venezuelan government is up to its head in working with these transnational criminal organizations provides a legal justification for the United States to threaten, if necessary, the removal of the Maduro regime, which, by the way, is an illegitimate regime. He stole the election, and a vast majority of Venezuelans, including our fellow Venezuelans who are in this country today, would approve of a move to overthrow him. But the key point is that this is legal, that the seizure of the tanker is legal as a countermeasure in response to, in fact, Venezuela has an international legal responsibility under international law not to allow its territory to be used this way.
All right, so Alberto, additionally, senators have been shown video of the so-called double tap that we're referring to on an alleged drug boat also near Venezuela. Now, the president has defended the order that was made under U.S. Admiral Frank Bradley, claiming that those who were killed were responsible for killing Americans by the millions by trafficking in illicit drugs. Critics, though, have raised concerns that that second strike might have broken international law. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, this is a separate issue. If indeed we killed people who were defenseless on the sea, that would be a war crime. And this is a totally separate issue. And on that issue, I do agree with the president's critics that this is unacceptable. Once you sink a boat and you have a couple of survivors out at sea, our obligation is to rescue them and then, if necessary, take them into the legal system for processing.
Well, if I can respectfully disagree with Professor Cole, not only the double tap strike, all of the strikes are unjustifiable under international law because, first of all, there's been no proof that these folks were transporting drugs, and even if they were, it's not a basis to kill them. It's a basis to arrest them and bring them to trial and through a due process. And also this whole issue of Venezuela being a key transporter of drugs, even U.S. intelligence services say that Venezuela has played a minor role compared to Colombia, which has always been the main trafficker of cocaine into the United States, Mexico, which has been the main trafficker of fentanyl into the United States, even Ecuador and the Dominican Republic are transporting or transshipping more drugs than Venezuela is. So there's no justifiable reason to pick out Venezuela of all the other countries in Latin America that supply drugs to the United States to target them in this way.
Lena Brito, the White House says that this is... Go right ahead.
Actually, Juan Gonzalez just said, and counter-argue my colleague, Professor Cole, on two counts. On the first one, this is no war crimes, and this is not just my opinion. This is the opinion of human rights lawyers like my colleague, Professor Priyanka Modaparty, who teaches at Northwestern Law School. They call these extrajudicial killings, extrajudicial assassinations. These are no war crimes because there's no war legally declared here. So therefore, this is just simple extrajudicial executions. And the other thing that I disagree with Professor Cole, but I agree with Juan Gonzalez, is that actually the superhighway for cocaine trafficking to the US and to Europe is now Ecuador. And nobody in the Trump administration is talking about Ecuador because President Noboa in Ecuador is a right-wing ally of the Trump administration. So we can see just right there the hypocrisy in the worst-case scenario or the ambiguity in the best-case scenario of the Trump administration policies and actions in South America.
Lena, the White House has said that this is all about maintaining security in the Western Hemisphere. How does this conflict mirror what we may have seen in past instances of U.S. intervention in the region?
Well, we see Trump actually resuscitating a very old historical pattern that goes back to the late 19th century, the gunboat diplomacy, where the U.S. is using military aggression, the threat of military occupation and invasion to bend the will of those governments that they disagree with, or those countries with strategic resources, such as the case of Venezuela with oil. And today, with the seizing of this oil tanker, that contradiction and ambiguity like just shown naked, because they've been talking about drugs and that this is about drugs, and then this happened. So it's evidently not about drugs, it's about controlling a strategic resource. So the interesting thing is that Trump knows that the war on drugs is a very flexible and malleable packet of strategies, resources, and discourses to use state violence for different purposes. In this particular case, for the purpose of regime change.
We're almost out of time. I want to play a quick clip from Venezuelan President Maduro. Here's what he said to the U.S.
Our message to the people of the United States remains the same. Peace. Peace above all else. No to crazy war. No to bloodshed for oil. No to war for oil, the recipe for eternal wars.
Alberto Cole, I'm going to come to you on this first. Just a couple of seconds. What do you make of the president's comment there?
Well, he's a liar. He cheated on the agreement that he made with President Biden. The agreement was that he would allow free and fair elections. In exchange for that, President Biden agreed to let Chevron operate in Venezuela for the first time in many years. Maduro broke his promises, and he will do anything. He will cheat and lie and do anything and kill lots of people, including imprisoning and torturing and killing political opponents for the sake of staying in power. So his promises are worthless, and I think that we need to keep this in mind. And I think most of the Venezuelans,
unfortunately, that's where we're going to have to leave it, Professor. We are actually out of time. Always a conversation that requires a lot of digging in. But my thanks to the three of you, Lena Brito, Alberto Cole, and Juan Gonzalez. Thanks to all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that's our show for this Thursday night. Stay connected with our reporters and what they're working on by following us on Instagram at WTTW Chicago. And join us tomorrow night at 5:30 and 7 for the Week in Review. Now, for all of us here at Chicago Tonight, I'm Brandis Friedman. Thanks for watching. Stay healthy and safe, and have a good night.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, wishing all a happy and healthy holiday season.